Chapter 32. Intelligence without agitation. The octopus is often used as proof that intelligence does not require familiarity. It has no bones, no face that reads as mammalian, no social order that resembles ours, no obvious affection rituals. And yet it solves problems with a quiet inventiveness that unsettles the human instinct to equate cognition with similarity. It explores, tests, withdraws, returns. It manipulates objects with a precision that looks like intention rather than reflex. It adapts so quickly to changing conditions that watching it can feel like watching thought itself take physical form. What is striking is not only what it can do, it is how it seems to do it. Human intelligence is frequently accompanied by agitation. A challenge appears and the mind inflates it. The person begins predicting failure, worrying about consequences, narrating what it will say about them if they struggle. The nervous system rises before any concrete information has been gathered. Thinking becomes entangled with self-protection. The problem is no longer only the problem, it becomes a stage for identity. Under those conditions, even simple obstacles feel emotionally expensive. The octopus encounters obstacles without turning them into personal events. It does not appear to dramatize the unknown. It approaches, it touches, it pauses in a way that does not look like hesitation, but like calibration. Its movements are neither frantic nor stiff, they are investigative. It changes approach without the visible resentment that humans often carry when a first attempt fails. It does not seem embarrassed by trial and error. It does not need the first move to be the correct move in order to begin moving. That freedom from self-evaluation is not innocence, it is an absence of narrative. Narrative, in the human sense, is the urge to bind an event to a story about the self and the future. It is the internal voice that says a setback proves something, that difficulty reveals a limitation, that uncertainty is a warning. Narrative gives emotional weight to a moment that may not deserve it. It extends sensation beyond its natural lifespan by attaching meaning that keeps the nervous system activated. A person may spend hours carrying the emotional residue of an obstacle that required only a few minutes of problem solving. The octopus seems to carry information, not residue. It does not cling to a failed attempt as a memory that must be defended against. It simply learns. It tries a different angle, explores a different seam, applies a different force. The body stays present. The mind stays close to the problem. It does not leave the situation to argue with itself about what the situation implies. It remains inside the immediate reality of the challenge and adjusts to what the challenge reveals. This is a model of intelligence that looks almost unromantic. There is no heroic striving visible in it, no need to conquer the object as proof of worth. There is only engagement. And engagement has a certain humility. It accepts that the problem will teach you how to solve it, but only if you stay close enough to gather the teaching. Humans often leave too early. They leave through distraction, through frustration, through a retreat into commentary. They try to solve the problem in abstraction rather than through contact. The mind becomes loud precisely when it is no longer learning. Learning requires quiet. Not a room, but a quiet relationship to discomfort. A person who cannot tolerate the feeling of not knowing will tend to replace learning with certainty seeking. They will rush to conclusions, adopt rigid strategies, or abandon the problem in order to relieve the discomfort of ambiguity. Intelligence then becomes limited not by capacity, but by emotional intolerance. The mind may be bright, yet it cannot stay in the space where brightness is actually needed, the space before the answer exists. The octopus lives in that space as though it were normal. It treats uncertainty as environment rather than as insult. Its body is designed for flexibility, but the deeper flexibility is cognitive. It does not insist that the world conform to a plan before it proceeds. It proceeds and adjusts. It is not waiting for certainty to arrive. It generates certainty through interaction. This is the kind of movement humans often postpone because they want the plan to feel clean before the first step is taken. Clean plans are rare. Clean contact is available. What makes the octopus particularly interesting is that its intelligence is distributed. Its nervous system is not centralized in the way ours is. Much of its processing occurs throughout its arms. It does not appear to think first and then act, as though action were merely execution of a conclusion. It seems to think through action. The arm explores, the body shifts, the environment responds, and cognition evolves inside that loop. It is not a mind perched above the world issuing commands. It is a mind woven into the world, learning at the speed of touch. Humans are capable of this as well, but they often resist it. They prefer to think in isolation because isolation feels safer. In isolation, failure cannot occur. In isolation, the mind can rehearse competence and avoid the friction of reality. The price is that the mind becomes more narratively active and less practically adaptive. When the person finally meets the real problem, the gap between rehearsal and reality produces anxiety, and the anxiety produces further withdrawal. The person calls this being overwhelmed by complexity. Often they are overwhelmed by the emotional cost of contact. The octopus does not pay that cost because it does not tax itself with imagined consequence. Its attention is not split between the puzzle and the story about the puzzle. It does not interpret resistance as judgment. It treats resistance as material. A lid is tight. A surface is slippery. A passage is narrow. These are properties, not accusations. The response is therefore precise. It does not waste energy trying to change the feeling of frustration before it continues. It simply continues in a different way, as though the obstacle were not an affront, but an instruction. Human agitation is often the feeling of being personally addressed by impersonal reality. A setback occurs, and it is felt as disrespect. A delay occurs, and it is felt as sabotage. A difficult person appears, and it is felt as an injustice that must be corrected immediately. The mind becomes a courtroom. Every inconvenience becomes evidence. The body responds as though it must defend its position. Under that posture, intelligence becomes less adaptive because it is busy litigating instead of learning. The person is trying to win against the moment rather than work with the moment. The octopus is not trying to win in that way. It is trying to succeed, which is a quieter aim. Success for it is not symbolic. It is practical. Get through the opening. Open the container. Escape the threat. Find the food. When the aim is practical, the mind can remain practical. It does not need to posture. It does not need to prove. It needs to adjust until the environment yields. That adjustment is where intelligence shows itself most clearly. The ability to shift strategy without emotional collapse, to abandon a method without self-criticism, to attempt again without shame. Shame is one of the most expensive human inventions. It turns learning into a threat. A person who feels shamed of not knowing will hide from not knowing. They will avoid situations that expose them. They will select tasks they can already perform to protect identity, and they will call this being productive. Meanwhile, their actual capacity stagnates, and the stagnation becomes another source of internal noise. The mind knows it is not growing. It compensates with distraction or fantasy. It becomes more agitated because the truth is uncomfortable. The octopus cannot be shamed out of contact. Its contact is the source of its solutions. There is something almost peaceful in watching a creature solve a problem without the problem requiring it to flatter it. The peace is not passivity. It is the absence of inner commentary. It is the sensation that attention is not being wasted on proving anything. The creature is simply engaged. Its intelligence is visible as responsiveness rather than as performance. It does not rush. It does not freeze. It explores until it understands enough to act decisively. And even then, decisiveness does not look like anger. It looks like alignment between perception and movement. Humans often confuse decisiveness with intensity. They assume that a strong decision must be accompanied by strong emotion, that certainty must feel like heat. The octopus suggests another possibility. Decisiveness can be cool. It can arrive not through emotional escalation, but through information gathered steadily. The mind becomes certain because it has tested reality, not because it has argued itself into confidence. This kind of certainty is quieter and more durable. It does not require maintaining a feeling. It rests on contact. Contact is what narrative often replaces. When people feel overwhelmed, they often retreat into story, because story provides structure without requiring risk. They explain why the problem is hard. They explain why now is not the time. They explain why they are not in the right state. Each explanation feels like progress because it is coherent, yet it does not change anything. The environment does not respond to explanation. The environment responds to interaction. A mind that can remain unagitated is a mind that can keep interacting long enough for reality to yield information. The octopus is a reminder that intelligence is not only the ability to think, but the ability to stay with uncertainty, to stay with friction, to stay with incomplete knowledge without turning those conditions into internal emergencies. Staying keeps the mind close to the data. It prevents panic from narrowing the field too soon. It allows adaptation to remain fluid. Humans often lose fluidity precisely when they most need it because they become internally loud. They begin trying to control outcomes by tightening, and tightening reduces perception. A quiet mind perceives more, not because it is wiser in an abstract sense, but because it is less occupied. This is the paradox that runs through so much of human work and emotion. The mind becomes more capable when it stops trying to feel capable. The octopus does not need to feel confident in order to act intelligently. It acts intelligently and the outcomes follow. The lesson is not to imitate the octopus's biology or to romanticize its existence. The lesson is to notice what happens when cognition is not burdened by self-story. Problems become problems again, not threats. Failure becomes feedback, not verdict. Uncertainty becomes a space to explore, not a signal to withdraw. In that space, intelligence can do what it is meant to do: adapt without drama, solve without self-punishment, and remain present long enough for the answer to be discovered rather than demanded.